Project 2025 is worrying because of its attempt to basically overturn, not just, it also wants to reduce the judiciary. And I think this is an also important thing. They're even questioning the Marbury decision. They're even questioning whether the executive branch can just ignore the judiciary on a whole bunch of issues. In other words, the president himself is the ultimate interpreter of the Constitution.
Right.
That's a huge step in an authoritarian direction.
Yes. Yes. Although they also have this faith that the Supreme Court is going to be with them. They think that the lower courts are all going to rule what they will, but they see a Supreme Court majority that is already on their side. I'm not sure they're right.
I don't think they're right at all.
But it's a faith that seems to course throughout the text.
Really?
For example, they think they want, speaking of grabbing powers, they want to impound.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Impoundment. Now, this is something that was gotten rid of under Nixon.
Right.
So let's this isn't a profound attack on the Constitution.
Right.
Is it?
Well, it was disputed before then, and the question is how.
Right.
Like many of these things, it's like how much is enough,
Okay.
and if you allow the power to impound a little bit, people get along with it, and then Nixon used it more than Congress wanted, and Congress, as we expect the system to work, passed a law to stop that.
Mm-hmm.
They think that that's unconstitutional, and they just think it hasn't been challenged in the right way, and they think that the Supreme Court will overturn it if they can just get the right case there. But I'm not sure they're right about that. And I think there's several of these places where I'm just not sure they're right. And once that happens, they don't really have a clear strategy for how they want to, what they do then. Because if their faith in the courts is disappointed, is the path simply to give in, or is it to start pushing to ignore the courts?
Yeah, I honestly find that baffling, that what you do actually is propose a budget that cuts spending and pass it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is the one thing they will not do. You actually move towards fiscal balance urgently through the legislative means.
There's a ghost of fiscal conservatism in here too.
Yeah,
they say we should balance the budget. They say the problem we have is basically we have a Medicare and Medicaid problem. They propose ways to cut Medicaid, but they don't really offer any plan for balancing the budget. And the reason is they know that Trump doesn't want to do that. Trump wants to spend. And so they'll acknowledge it, but they can't lay out a real program for it. And so they can't offer a budget proposal to do it either.
Yeah. And the trouble is that the debt keeps going up quite massively. And we just saw briefly what bond markets could do to us if they wanted to at some point in the future, if this continues. Mm-hmm. I'm old enough to remember when we were worrying about the deficit in the 90s. Ross Perot nearly broke through in 92 because of his obsession with this. Mm-hmm. And the situation today is just exponentially worse.
Right.
COVID obviously was a huge problem in this respect everywhere. Mm-hmm. But that's, in some ways, that's understandable, although some of it might have been, in retrospect, too much. But I'm not going to quibble over that. But yeah, this is so weird. It's like conservatism that historically was concerned with executive overreach is now, in order to rebalance the Constitution, empowering the executive in ways really quite radical for our modern era, and even potentially, but not there yet, all time. In other words, if they really move against judicial independence. I can't believe the Supreme Court's going to rule themselves irrelevant. They're not.
Right.
And nor should they. And I am not unimpressed with them so far. I think they have tried to avoid a direct, damaging confrontation, but they have also been clear. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not discouraged by the current court.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
I think that's right. I don't think they're as pliant as the authors here seem to think. Mm-hmm. I do think they're defending their prerogatives to some extent. And, obviously speeches don't matter, but we have John Roberts just in the last couple of days saying that rule of law is endangered. That doesn't sound like the sort of guy who wants to hand a lot of extra power to the White House.